Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first episode of Sustainability and Artisan Craft. I'm your host, Amber Christian, editor of Handmade Seller Magazine. And in this series of episodes, what we're looking to do is talk with the people behind the sustainable products. So I have our first guest today, and this is Courtney from Trekell. So, Courtney, welcome to the show. And can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes. Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me, Amber. My name is Courtney Bridges, and I am the owner of Trekell Art Supplies. We are a small art supply company located in Southern California, and we manufacture our own artist canvases in-house, brush care products, and we also offer high-grade artist brushes.
Mhm. So let's get into a little bit more of how did you get here? Can you tell us the origin story of the company? How long have you been
Definitely.
around? How
Yes.
many people are working for the company? Give us all a scoop.
Yes. It's a very interesting story. I love telling it because everyone's always shocked about it. But the original owner of the company is Brian Trekell. That's where the name Trekell comes from. So when he graduated high school, he wanted to do something with his life. He wanted to go on an adventure. So he said he just went up to Alaska and started salmon fishing up there and just kind of met people from all over the world because so many people come in to do that. And he met a lot of people from Asia and they were like, hey, salmon fishing season's over. Come back with us. And let's, we have stuff for you to do over here. So he was, doing odd jobs and then got into brush making over there. He said in the villages that there were like legitimate like people that just had huts and that's what they did. They would go get their products that they needed for the day, go back to their hut, make the brush stuff, take it back to the main, factory. And so he was kind of fascinated by that, watching this all go down. So he started learning how to make brushes with them, and then that went from him going to bigger and bigger companies and working for them and seeing how it's done. And then he wanted to do that for himself and stop working for somebody else. But before he came back to the US to do that, he went to Germany and was certified by a master brush maker over there to be able to make brushes. It's a big thing in Germany. So he got that certification. Doesn't matter in the US, but it is cool that he still got it and like honored the tradition. And then came back to the US, and that was in the early 80s. And that was when the acrylic nail industry was taking off. So he started producing brushes for acrylic fingernails, and he was private labeling those for all the big brands out there like OPI and Tammy Kaler Nails, NSI, like huge companies. And that just was the main part of the business was nail brushes. And I believe it was probably early 90s. He was like, let's try to do some artist brushes too, because it's the same process to do that. It's just a different filament that you're using for the artist brushes. So that started in the early 90s. And then I started here right out of high school because my mom was like, get a job. And I was like, I need something. So my cousin actually worked here and got me the job. And I came in and, this is just a job to get me started before I'm going to go off to college and get this amazing education and have a fancy job. And so I got in here, started doing the nail brushes. And then I was here for a couple of years when, Brian was like, hey, we have these art brushes that never have really taken off. See what you can do with it. And I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about artists, art supplies. So let's see what we can do. So this is, early 2000s. So with me being a millennial, that was the MySpace days. And I was like, let's get on MySpace and see what these artists are up to. And I just started networking through there and meeting artists and getting more information and, basically learned from them. Such an amazing community of people that will just give you all the knowledge and they just want to be heard too. It's like, hey, why don't you guys tell us what you want? And they've just fed me so much information and helped grow this company to where it is today. And that's basically the origin story. And we really owe it to all of our artists for where we are today.
Mm-hmm. And so it all started by being named after the founder, Trekell,
Yes. Yes.
and it kind of grew from there. So it's interesting that the story is as a nail brush.
Yes.
That ironically enough, my aunt, via marriage, actually runs a company where she makes nail polish
Oh, how funny.
called Dazzle Dry. So I'm like, oh wow,
Yes.
how interesting. Nail care comes up. Fabulous product, but I digress. And as you sort of moved from there's the nail care into the artist care, you highlighted something I think that's really important, and it's the power of listening to the community. we aren't going to know all the answers as business owners, and we have to listen to the people that are actually doing the thing,
Yes.
right? That can
Yes.
tell us all the things we don't know. Like I talk about a lot of different areas of craft. That doesn't mean I do all of them.
Yeah.
No one human would have that capacity to do that. And so, how do you think? Is there anything in particular that you would highlight that you actually did that you think made that easier for you from a feedback and like so you're walking in the MySpace days and what kinds of things were you asking people? I'm
Oh
just
man, I wish I
very
could.
curious to kind
I
of
know, and I wish
rewind
that
down
I
that
could
road.
remember. So I had to start, the Trekell MySpace page, and then you would send these people messages, and it was, basically an introduction of who I am and what I'm trying to accomplish, and get feedback from them. And most of the artists were receptive, and there were a few that were like, "What is this scam that you're trying to pull on us?" Because nobody had heard of us back then, and yeah, it was just very, we had a marketer that we were working with, so I was finding artists for her to work with, and I was just kind of the intermediary person that was connecting them. So they worked with her for a little bit, and then afterwards, Greg Simpkins, who is our still on our pro team, he's one of the first artists to ever work with us. Once we stopped working with that marketing team, he approached us and was like, "Do you guys do sponsorships?" And it was nothing that we'd done before. So we're like, "Hey, let's try it with him," and kept working with him on the sponsorship. And, the relationship just kind of grew from there. And then he would just start, giving us ideas of things that we could be doing, or things that he uses from another brand that we don't offer. And, then he introduces me to other artists, and they introduce me to, and it just like was this huge snowball effect. And it just really worked out in my favor. Apparently they like me. So I guess that's a huge part of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So now talk a little bit more about paintbrushes. We've talked it quite a lot about, but you said there's a few other aspects and other products that the company does. Can you elaborate on those a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So once again, Greg Simpkins, he was talking to us about, why don't you guys add, canvases to your line? That's something that you don't offer. My dad makes mine, for me, for my shows. He can show you how to do it. So we went down to his dad's garage in Torrance, and his dad just showed us the quick little setup that he has to make the cradle Baltic birch panels. And we took that knowledge, brought it back here, and started doing it in house. And then, that turned into an employee being like, "Hey, have you guys ever thought about doing coffin shaped panels for Halloween?" "No, we haven't. Let's try that." An artist coming in, "Can you make me a triangle shape, panel?" "No, we haven't done it before, but we'll try it." And then we start realizing that people are wanting all these other shapes. So I didn't know that there was something called a CNC router out there that could just cut all this out for us. But once we discovered it and got it in house, it was, then it started turning into all different kinds of shapes of panels. And, the sky's the limit now with it. People really enjoy those panels, and we love making them and seeing the different things we can come out with. We were asked to make linen panels, so we do that here in house. We adhere the linen to different substrates with what is called Viva film, which is highly archival. So that's very useful if your stuff is going to end up in galleries, museums one day. It's really good for the conservators to have that Viva film. And then we prime the panels here by hand with gesso and oil ground, so it has a little bit of a texture than what is out there on the market right now. And then we also do brush care in house. We make linseed oil soap, coconut oil soap, and brush restorer. And the coconut oil soap and the linseed oil soap do use palm oil, but that is sustainably sourced. And then our Baltic birch that we use for our panels is also sustainably sourced.
So we got a lot of sustainability going on
Yes,
in
definitely.
in the conversation. I think one of the challenge too, from the perspective of an artist that is buying it, when you go into stores and stuff too, unless things are really directly marketed to you, one company can look the same as the next company can look.
Mhm.
It's just the nature of it, right? Because there's so many different supplies in stores, and there's only so much real estate in
Yes.
retail, and so it's interesting to hear about. Well, actually, there is a lot more sustainability going on than you might realize
Hmm.
on the surface of things. And so let's talk about your paintbrushes a little
Yes.
bit. And when we met at Creativation by NAMTA, we were talking about eco-friendly art brushes. I was on the hunt. I was walking the
Hmm.
show floor looking for people that made an eco-friendly paintbrush. And I know that there isn't really, for people watching and say, well, there isn't really a prescriptive term. There isn't really that many, it's not like we can say, oh, it's this certified. A
Yeah,
lot of things in the sustainable world, because there aren't necessarily certifications everywhere. A lot of it is really talking about, well, what kinds of things are being done that help the sustainability, that help make it more eco-friendly. So can you speak a little bit to some of the things that you're doing with your paintbrushes that actually help make it more eco-friendly and sustainable?
definitely. So we just recently, about a year ago, introduced a new line of brushes, and they're called our mids brushes.
Hmm.
We got them because everything we do offers pretty high professional quality, but we don't want to exclude artists from our products. So we wanted to offer something that was a little more affordable for people that still want something high quality, but don't feel like, spending that amount of money on it. So we found a new vendor, started working with them, and we have these mids brushes, and we started asking questions, and come to find out everything they're doing is very, very eco-friendly. The only thing that I guess you could say is a little bit subjective would be the filament, because
Hmm.
some people would say the filament, if it's not biodegradable, how is that eco-friendly? But then if you're using natural animal hair, some people are saying, how is that eco-friendly when you're, killing animals for the hair? So we stick to the synthetic, just because that's the way that it seems to be going. We have less of a
Hmm.
demand for natural hair brushes. So we do stick with the synthetics for now. But everything that they offer us for the brush, all the way from the handle to the glue to the paint, is all eco-friendly and has been certified to make sure
Hmm.
that what they are doing is going to, not damage our planet, because we're already doing enough of that on our own. So they are trying their hardest to do what they can to reduce that. So I mean, even starting with the process of just the water treatment. They're making sure that they're recycling the water that they're using, and that's going back into their system. The handle that the brush is made out of, they make sure that that comes from a sustainably sourced forest, that they're not chopping down trees and not replanting or anything like that. Like, they're getting the birch from somewhere that is basically put in place for this, and they're not taking down animals' environments or anything like that while they're doing it. So really, really, really love that. What else do they have here? Sorry, you're probably gonna have to edit this.
Oh no, we're totally fine. These are
Okay.
casual conversations. We're all good. And I even, and I'll spoiler alert for everybody. I actually know all the specs of what makes it eco-friendly before we get into
Yes.
this as well too.
Yes.
So we're
So
just kind of
I'm
covering off on all of it.
going back and forth between tabs here, and it's not going as smoothly as I thought it would. But
Oh no, you're doing fine. I think the only one you missed is we were talking about some of the paint and the ink,
yes, so
and
the
that
paint
there's.
and the ink
Mhm.
are compliant with the CPSIA and the REACH standards. So it's
Mhm.
guaranteeing that each brush is safe for all users and applications, which means that these brushes can also be used in culinary, for people that want to do painting on their foods with food dyes and things like that. It's okay
Ah.
for children to use. Everybody,
Mhm.
like, it's not going to harm in that sense. Yes, it would be more ideal if the paint was biodegradable, like I said, same as the filament, but at least it's not toxic, things like that. The best thing that they could possibly do is offer us a brush with no paint on it and no printing. But then you have that problem of nobody knows what the brand is if it's not on the brush.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely. So, and
It, it,
and go ahead.
I was just saying a different problem emerges, and they're like, "Who did I
Yeah.
buy this from again?"
Exactly. So it's always that catch 22. They are trying to perfect it. We're still not there yet, but I'm so happy to see that they are on their way and trying to get there. I did ask about the filament being biodegradable, and they said that they are currently working on making brush filament from corn, but that has not been perfected yet. So we're not
Mhm.
there, but they are looking at something that is biodegradable, that doesn't have to come from an animal. And then,
Mhm.
there is the plastic sleeve covering that goes on round brushes to protect the point. They are also looking into ways to make that more eco-friendly. I've heard of them looking into using coconut fiber for that, but
Mhm.
it's still not
Mhm.
available yet. So they are working on that in the background. They do know that there's a demand for it. We stay on top of them to find out where they are in these processes, how much longer is it going to be. But they definitely are trying to stay ahead of the curve, and I totally appreciate everything that they're doing. And I'm glad that we can
Mhm.
offer something like that to our customers.
And I think that's the key part around a lot of this is doing what you can. You
Yes,
may not be able to do everything right now because often a lot of the products, it does require you to have to re-engineer things and to have to work through those processes, and then that means there's a whole testing process to make sure that, if you change one thing out, that it doesn't cause issues in other parts of the manufactured product. And so it's very much an iterative process, and so it's always encouraging to hear that R&D is continuing around what else can we do, how
yes,
else do we continue to go further and further. And oftentimes you're actually having to push product toward, you're like, hey, we want this. And like, okay, now we're trying to figure out how to get there from here
hmm
and bridge that gap so that you can continue iterating and improving and making it more and more sustainable,
yes,
in
exactly.
that process.
Yes,
So you've had quite an adventure with this company
I
since
have.
you joined out of high school.
I did not think I would be here. I just thought this was going to be my first job and I'd be off to something else later on, but I just stuck with it. And it definitely was the art supply part that kept me here because as much as the nail brushes, brought us business and paid our bills, my heart was not in that business. The beauty industry is for certain types of people and it just didn't mesh with my personality. But the artists that I have to deal with are amazing. I just love the
Mhm.
community so much. I love everything about it. And I honestly can't picture working anywhere else now.
Mhm. So tell me a little bit more about, you talked about working in some sponsorship type capacity with artists. What kinds of things have you done in the past related to that in some of those relationships? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Definitely. So when it first started, it was just, the sponsorship of we're going to give you supplies and you just tell people that you use our product. And then
Hmm.
as social media evolved, it became a little more, now you need to post about us. Now you need to do this. Now you need to do that. But I wanted the sponsorship to be more than just you get product, in exchange for talking about us. We really
Hmm.
want it to be more like a family atmosphere with our artists. So it was like, what do you guys want us to make for you? Put your name on it. We'll give you a cut of the sales. Like, let's do stuff like that. So we've done brush sets with artists. We've done paint sets with them, limited edition panels, apparel they've designed for us. I mean, it's just anything you can think of. They'll come at
Hmm.
us and just be like, "This is a cool idea. What do you guys think about it?" And it's like, "Let's try it." Like we love this kind of stuff. So we have done retreats with them. We went to Vegas this year and had a
Hmm.
little pop up at the Punk Rock Museum out there, and then afterwards we went to a concert with Bad Religion and Social Distortion and took them all there. And it's fun to see them all bonding, and it's like it's more than about we're just these artists. It's like, no, we're artists from all different genres, all different walks of life, and we all are behind this company. And I love them, they love us. It's just a really cool family kind of bond that we have with them.
Hmm. And is it mostly word of mouth? Do you put out calls if you're looking for new people? Do people pitch you ideas?
So
What's the
yeah,
the best
we in
way?
the past it was mostly just me being like, hey, I like this artist, I'm going to add him to our roster. But then I realized, I can only get out of the office so much and meet so many people a year. I'm probably missing a good amount of artists. So my fiance actually works at the company with me, and he, was like, why aren't we just doing like an open call to get people to
Hmm.
apply? So we started doing that 2 or 3 years ago, and we opened up applications, and people submit their applications, and we go through it. We interview them. Make sure that we think they're going to be a good fit, and then we add them at the beginning of that year. We go through the whole year, see how that sponsorship has worked out for both parties. If it's beneficial to keep on going, we'll add them to the next year. If it didn't work out with somebody or if they're too busy, we remove
Hmm.
them from the roster, but then that gives us a spot to add somebody new. So there's a constant rotation of artists coming through with new ideas and keeping the company fresh.
Hmm. And so it's basically kind of on an annual kind of
Yes,
cadence for
every
you that you're
January.
looking at it. Okay.
Yes.
So if people are like, hey, wait a second, that would be really cool, they should be
Yes.
watching for when you announce your open calls in
Yes.
January. That's the best way for artists to collaborate with you if they're interested in doing more with that, and that there's kind of a whole process and series of steps that they'll go through. And I assume it's free to apply.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. Always important to ask.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned is some different segments of craft. Sometimes there's fees to even apply to things like there are shows or other things, and so
Yeah.
it's just so people can take their shot if
Yes,
they
definitely.
want to collaborate with you.
Yes.
So now tell me a little bit more about how people can find you on socials and all of the other, if they want to learn more about the company, learn more about your products, what's the best way to find out more about the company?
So definitely, we're mostly active on Instagram, and our Instagram username is Trekell underscore art underscore supplies. I mean, you type in Trekell on Google, and everything's going to pop up. Our Facebook page, our website, our
Mhm.
Instagram. There's not nobody out there is using that name, so we're pretty easy to find. But Instagram is definitely where you can keep up to date with what we're doing the most. And then our
Mhm.
website, Trekell.com. If you sign up for our email newsletter, there's always stuff going on there to keep you up to date with what's happening, promos, discounts, things like that. But those are our two most active channels. We're also on TikTok and Threads and Pinterest and Facebook and YouTube, like everybody else is. But yeah, that's how we do it. And we are in some retail locations. We're in about 27 locations right now, and you can go to our website to the store locator and find where those stores are at, and you can walk in, see the product in person, because we know buying online isn't for everybody. So there are some stores out there that are carrying us.
But you do also sell direct to consumer, not
Yes.
only through supply stores.
Yes. Oh
Okay.
no, if you go to our website, it is direct to consumer.
Perfect. Perfect. So if people are interested in the brushes and can't get to one of those locations, they could also just order online as
Yes.
well.
And also that we have a few products on Amazon for those that, use Amazon Prime. We
Mhm.
get it. So we have some of our top sellers on there for them to try out as well.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Courtney. This has been a lot of fun to hear the origin story of how the company has evolved and how you're still on your first company, even though you
Yes.
weren't planning on that.
Definitely. And thank you so much for having me. It was really great to talk about this.
And thank you everyone so much for joining us. And you can also follow us on the Handmade Seller YouTube channel if you want to learn more about a whole variety of our shows. If you want to learn more about subscribing to the magazine, you can go to handmadeseller.com and you can learn more about subscriptions there as well. So thank you, and we will see you next time.